Silver Money, I present you the warriors of our team, rising as knights, guided by lights, ready to fight, shining bright, a journey we embark to hold the mark for igniting the spark. May we win, or should we say, when each day we cheer, when each day we cheer.
Salient features regarding our final diagnosis are right upper quadrant pain radiating to epigastrium, nausea and vomiting, bloatedness, mild peripheral edema, distended neck veins, displaced PMI to the 6th intercostal space, tachypnea, tachycardia, smoking history, family history of hypertension, easy fatigability, crackles on both lung fields, anicteric sclera, cough, ultrasound findings showing hepatomegaly with diffuse liver parenchymal disease and thickened gallbladder.
Differential diagnosis. The first differential diagnosis is acute Budd-Chiari syndrome. We considered this diagnosis because the patient had pain in the right upper quadrant, abdominal distension, hepatomegaly, and the patient had impaired liver function test. We ruled out this diagnosis because the patient didn't have jaundice and there was no sign of altered regional echogenicity in ultrasound and there was no history of Budd-Chiari syndrome, acute pancreatitis. We considered this diagnosis because the patient had pain in the epigastrium, nausea and vomiting, abdominal tenderness, bloatedness, tachycardia, tachypnea. The patient was an occasional alcoholic drinker and smoker. The level of blood urea nitrogen, hematocrit and WBCs were high. We ruled out this diagnosis because the serum amylase and lipase levels were normal and the pancreas was completely normal in ultrasound. Alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency. We considered this diagnosis because the patient had epigastric pain radiating to the right upper quadrant, hepatomegaly, edema in the extremities, fatigue, history of smoking, tachypnea, anemia, elevated transaminases, elevated prothrombin time and low albumin, and also cough. We ruled out this diagnosis because the patient didn't have jaundice or liver cirrhosis, superior mesenteric artery thrombosis or infarct. We considered this diagnosis because the patient had a sudden severe abdominal pain, fever, nausea and vomiting. We ruled out this diagnosis because the patient didn't have any frequent bowel movements or any rectal bleeding.
Viral hepatitis. We considered this diagnosis because the patient had right upper quadrant pain, nausea, vomiting, and increased liver function test. We ruled out this diagnosis because the immunoserology tests are non-reactive. Cholecystitis. We considered this diagnosis because the patient had epigastric pain radiating to the right upper quadrant, bloatedness, nausea, vomiting, ultrasound finding of thickened gallbladder which may be secondary to reactive changes versus cholecystitis seen and Murphy's sign. It cannot be ruled out. Diffuse liver parenchymal disease. We considered this diagnosis because the patient had epigastric pain radiating to the right upper quadrant, respiratory alkalosis, anemia, increased liver function test, peripheral edema, hepatomegaly with diffuse liver parenchymal disease seen in ultrasound. It cannot be ruled out. Congestive heart failure. We considered this diagnosis because the patient had crackles and cough, easy fatigability, distended neck veins, and PMI was displaced to the 6th intercostal space. It cannot be ruled out. The final diagnosis is acalculous cholecystitis and congestive hepatopathy secondary to congestive heart failure. Discussion of final diagnosis. There are two types of cholecystitis, which is acute and chronic. Acute produces sudden inflammation with marked abdominal pain, nausea, vomiting, and fever. Chronic produces lower intensity inflammation with mild intermittent abdominal pain and lasts a long time. There is also calculous and acalculous cholecystitis, in which acalculous cholecystitis does not produce any gallstones and calculous cholecystitis produces gallstones. Signs and symptoms of acalculous cholecystitis are abrupt onset of symptoms of severe right upper abdominal pain or Murphy's sign, nausea, vomiting, distended gallbladder, bloating. The level of WBCs will be high. Diagnostic tools are the preferred one, ultrasonography. Scintigraphy can be the alternative. Treatment is cholecystectomy.
Pathophysiology. Here we have two final diagnoses. One is acalculous cholecystitis and one is congestive hepatopathy secondary to heart failure. As patient having a family history of hypertension and also a smoker which develops atherosclerosis. Smoking activates a number of mechanisms predisposing to atherosclerosis like thrombosis, insulin resistance, dyslipidemia, vascular inflammation, abnormal vascular growth and angiogenesis, and develops compensated asymptomatic left ventricular hypertrophy and displays the PMI on 6th intercostal space as seen in our case. Left ventricular hypertrophy is the most potent predictor of adverse cardiovascular outcomes in the hypertensive as well as in normotensive population. Normotensive adolescents with a family history of hypertension had a greater left ventricular mass than the normotensive adolescent with normotensive parents as published in Dow Press Journal. So left ventricular hypertrophy leads to decrease in end diastolic volume in left ventricle, which causes backup of blood in the lungs via pulmonary vein and leads to congestion of lungs and leakage of fluid, thus develops interstitial edema and comes up with dyspnea, crackles or auscultation, cough as seen in our case. So lung congestion and leakage of fluid increases pulmonary resistance and increases afterload in right ventricle or say right ventricle failure, which causes congestion of blood in venous system and congestion of liver and leads to increased hydrostatic pressure in liver, thus sinusoidal edema and hemorrhage, and decreased perfusion of zone 3 hepatocytes. So put together both causes necrosis of hepatocytes and leads to hepatocellular injury and liver dysfunction and comes up with a marked increase in AST and ALT and decreased prothrombin time and INR. So here hepatocellular injury and liver dysfunction leads to compensatory hyperplasia and hepatomegaly and causes right upper quadrant pain as seen in our case. Also right ventricular failure causes congestion of gallbladder which leads to increased intraluminal pressure, hence ischemia of gallbladder wall and enhance the inflammatory reactions. Here increased intraluminal pressure also causes the bile stasis and leads to bacterial colonization and causes acute acalculous cholecystitis. A patient comes up with the epigastric pain radiating to right upper quadrant, positive Murphy sign, bloatedness as seen in our case. Also bacterial colonization further enhance the inflammatory responses here. So if acute acalculous cholecystitis is left untreated, it leads to systemic inflammatory response, SIDS, and patient develops tachycardia, tachypnea, leukocytosis and fever as seen in our case. If not controlled, then develops septic shock as seen in our patient on day 2. The patient is with SIDS and hypotension. So septic shock causes increase in inflammatory mediators, endothelial activation and injury. Endothelial activation and injury leads to increased permeability, hence increased vascular leakage which interferes with the tissue perfusion and leads to hypoxic state and causes metabolic acidosis. That's there in our patient. Also endothelial activation leads to production of nitric oxide which causes vasodilation and systemic hypotension and comes up with adverse outcomes like also in kidney it can cause acute kidney injury, hence develops anuria, increased blood urea nitrogen and creatinine as seen in our case. Also in liver, it causes hypoperfusion, which further worsens the pre-existing congestion. And in heart, sepsis induces apoptotic pathways in myocardial cells and causes myocardial infarction, which leads to abnormalities in heart rate, contractility, and further worsens the heart congestion in patient and leads to cardiac arrest on day 4th. As exogenous epinephrine, dopamine are given, CPR and defibrillator also given, and patient comes with cold and clammy skin observed. Thank you.
Moving on to cause of death. The immediate cause of death means the final disease or injury causing death. The antecedent cause of death is a disease or condition that preceded and caused the immediate cause of death. The underlying cause of death means the disease or condition present before and leading to the immediate cause of death. In our patient's case, the immediate cause of death was the septic shock secondary to gangrenous and infarcted gallbladder. The antecedent cause of death was the acanthosis cholecystitis itself. The underlying cause of death was the left ventricular heart failure. Thank you.